on Planning, Development, and Transportation's hearing on dockets number 0113 through 0117. My name is Michelle Wu, and I'm chair of this committee. And I want to remind everyone that this public hearing is being recorded and broadcast live on channels Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, and streaming on the City of Boston website. Please silence your cell phones and other devices. And if anyone wishes to testify, please mark the sign-in sheet, and we will make sure your testimony is incorporated throughout the hearing. I will read the dockets now officially into the record. Again, these dockets were are various confirmations and appointments sponsored by the mayor and referred to this committee on January 29th, 2020. Docket number 0113, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of John Freeman as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2021. Docket number 0114, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Susan Goganian as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2021. Docket number 0115, message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of Joseph Castro as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2020. Docket number 0116, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Bradford Walker as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2020. And last but not least, docket number 0117, message in order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Christopher Hart as an alternate member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2021. I am pleased to be joined by my colleague, District Councilor Liz Braden. I want to ask our District Councilor if she would like to make any opening statements before we dive right in.
No, I have no statements.
Okay, thank you. So I think best if we are going to have actually cover three different commissions and boards throughout the morning. So this first section is, as you heard, the Landmarks Commission, but two of the members are also part of the Highland Park study group to determine if the area requires a commission. So we will go through the landmarks portion first, and then we'll return at the end of this beginning part just to the two members so they can comment now and not have to stay until the very end of the hearing. But Roseanne, could you please introduce yourself and kind of describe what the commission does?
I'm the Director of Historic Preservation for the City of Boston. I wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, and Councilor Braden, who I haven't met yet, for holding this committee hearing about nominees for our commission. The Landmarks Commission that I am the director of is the Historic Preservation Agency for the City of Boston, and we do many things to try to preserve the historic resources in the city, not just landmarking, which the name is a bit of a misnomer. And I would be happy to come and make a presentation to the members of City Council just to present more information and have answer any questions you might have about it. The Landmarks Commission is the body that makes determinations about landmarks designations for districts, which we're going to be talking about Highland Park later, as well as individual landmarks. And there are also decisions made about demolitions and many other historic preservation related activities. So we do quite a bit.
And could you just remind us how many commissioners are there in total, and what's the structure? How many years do they serve in terms?
So total, it's hard to count the people because many of our commissioners also serve on multiple seats on the district commissions, but there are over 80 seats, and we have the one kind of overarching Landmarks Commission, and then we also have 9 district commissions that have their own staff. So it's a busy place.
And what are the basic requirements that you look for in commissioners, and what is the ideal picture of what a commissioner would the experience or expertise that he or she would bring to the table?
So aside from the actual qualifications that we have that are written into our legislation and bylaws and so forth. We're looking for people who are willing to serve, and I really appreciate everyone who's willing to volunteer to sit on our commissions. It's not paid, and they just have to get the reward of doing great work for the city. And we're looking for kind of a range of qualifications. We have architects, as well as historians, as well as landscape architects, real estate professionals. It runs the gamut, really.
And how do you find most of the commissioners? How does the mayor decide whom to nominate? Are there organizations that you reach out to, or other ways in which people kind of find their way into a pipeline to become commissioners?
We have a variety of ways that we get folks nominated for these positions. Again, we have kind of a very rigid setup of the Greater Boston Real Estate Board will nominate a slate, Chamber of Commerce, the Boston Society of Landscape Architects, but we also have now a web portal where people can self-nominate, as well as civic organizations for the neighborhoods where our districts are located. So we have many ways that people can get involved.
And is there generally a wait list of people? For example, with the self-nomination, are you finding that there are people that you're having to turn away who are interested in getting involved? I'm just curious kind of what the general interest is.
We don't want to say that we turn them away, but there may be an opportunity further along. Because
there are more people than there are seats.
There are, but we always have, because of the staggered nature of the seats, we always have terms that are expiring and new slots opening up. So yeah, it might take a while, but we try to accommodate anyone who's interested and, is able to attend the hearings.
Got it. And okay, the last question from me, and then I'll turn over to Councilor Braden just on the structure of the commission itself. Could you give a few examples of major projects, parcels, landmarks that people might be familiar with that the commission has worked on recently?
So one of the recently designated landmarks is 50 Cedar Street, which is also an African church in Roxbury, which also happens to be in the Highland Park study area for an architectural conservation district. And that came to us through a petition because of a demolition application. So it was slated to be demolished, and the community really pulled together to make the case, and it is historic as well, very historic. So we were able to save that, and it's now being developed by Historic Boston into a great resource for the community.
Great, thank you, Roseanne. Councilor Braden, any questions?
I'd just like to thank you for your work. I'm very familiar with your work in Alston Brighton. We have the Aberdeen District, and
I'm glad
we call and ask for help when it comes to trying to preserve some of our more long-standing buildings and structures in our district at a time of great change. So really thank you for your work. I just wanted to know, in terms of the commission, is there a spread of membership across the whole city, or do you try and have different districts, different neighborhoods be represented?
So for the district commission, so for Aberdeen, there are really strict requirements as to residents of the neighborhood being part of that commission.
Mm-hmm.
For landmarks, it's much more citywide. So as long as you live in the city of Boston, you're able to represent. We do have new nominees for landmarks coming in that live in other neighborhoods, for example, Dorchester, and also Nubian Square. We have a resident that will be coming on board hopefully soon. So we do have kind of a cross-section, and we try to get that, and Rosendale and Hyde Park, that's right. Sorry, Chris. So Yeah, we have folks who are interested in the process from all over.
Yeah, and we're very excited with the preservation of the Speedway. I know.
Yes.
Ever since I've lived in the neighbourhood, that's been a project. So we somebody do something with that. So here we are. It's going to happen. We're very excited.
It's amazing.
So thank you for your work on that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Okay, Roseanne, could you please introduce the nominees that are present?
Do you want it in any? Do you want an order or?
Whatever. No particular orders.
So here's Christopher Hart, who's from Hyde Park, as he mentioned. He's got a wide background in universal access and has his finger on the pulse of a lot of different historic preservation issues in the city. So we've been, we're glad to have him on the commission, and we're honored that he's willing to keep serving, so.
Thank you. Well, let's do introductions down the line, and then we'll likely ask questions for all the nominees.
Great.
Each wave.
John Freeman is a long-serving, and I should know these terms off the top of my head, but I don't. Note to self. So John Freeman has been with the Landmarks Commission for a really long time, and also has a seat on the South End Historic District Commission, and we are grateful for him as an architect, offering his usually very level-headed views, most of the time, on preservation issues. Sue Goganian is from Dorchester and has worked at the Bostonian Society, preserving the old State House, and is currently heading the Beverly Historical Society. So she also has some great insight, and she's part of a great working team on the Landmarks Commission. And Joe Castro will be new. I've had a conversation with him. I think he's, as a real estate professional, he will be a great addition to the team to offer his insights into that process.
Great, thank you. So maybe if we'll just ask a few questions for each of the future commissioners to answer in, again, whatever, maybe the same order makes sense. So for returning or reappointments, what do you think are the ways in which the Landmarks Commission needs to do better? In your experience, what would you do differently now that you're coming back? And for Joe, for example, how do you, just as a new outside observer, how do you think, what are the ways in which the commission needs to grow or change? And it doesn't have to be, it could be, I mean, my sort of self-projected answer is that you need more resources in general, but in addition, so it doesn't have to be about the commission per se, it could be outside factors as well. Chris, could we start with you?
So I've been on the commission now for about 6 years. There is a distinct learning curve that is required, and I think Joe is going to begin to realize quite quickly. If you're not familiar with the ins and outs of preservation, both statute and practice, it can be somewhat, I would say, nebulous, might be the correct term. And it is very often the case where people simply practice demolition by neglect, and they view a property as a blight to the neighborhood, when in fact that property has deep-seated history to either the neighborhood, the city, or even the country as a whole, but has not been cared for correctly. And that partly speaks to the inability of ISD to provide a level of oversight of properties without the city to say, hey guys, you know, you need to maintain building acts, and you need to maintain the building envelope, so that you don't lose properties that way. And that means that we are not in the position of trying to hold back the dam of angry neighbors and tear this thing down. That's one point. I think the other point, frankly, is one that as someone that works at the T, we deal with regularly, and that is succession planning and keeping staff. And so the reality is, yeah, technically we may have a wait list for some commissions. We have others where we just cannot get a quorum to show up. And then you have staff who frankly turn over at an alarming rate, and that hinders the ability to get through the workflow and the work plans that we establish. That's number one. And there's number two, which came up Tuesday night. We had a reasonable developer asking when their particular property's study report would be done. Well, when you've got a backlog of roughly 100 plus study reports, and you've only got a couple FTE, and it's very difficult to look at a well-meaning developer and say, we really cannot tell you when we're going to get to it.
Got it.
So that's my general observation. I hope over time, as the BRA begins to be less siloed, we can leverage development mitigation to help underwrite things like the commission work as well as the T's work to really improve neighborhoods. But I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Chris. That was incredibly insightful, and I'm charged to follow certain lines. Thank you so much.
I am John Freeman. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. I'm from Roslindale and a neighbor too, so we've met there. Two things come to mind. I've been a commissioner for 22 years. I'm one of the two longest serving commissioners. And in that period, we've seen the Boston building industry go through a lot of perturbations in its the amount of work being done. And right now is an almost unprecedented peak in construction in Boston. And that puts a lot of stress on historic buildings and therefore a lot of stress on the staff of the Landmarks Commission. And I think that one of the things that could be helpful was a way that there could be more staff or more hours in the day, one or the other, to help the staff deal with the huge influx of work that's coming. The other thing is that the delay that we have in Boston is only a 90-day delay. And that's one of the shortest around. Other communities in Boston have 180
The demolition
days.
delay you're talking about.
So, and major projects, you know, that are 5-year development projects, 90 days is a blip on the radar to them. So if there was a way to improve or increase the demolition delay for, if nothing else, the major projects, I think that would be very helpful and also helpful to staff. And I agree with everything Chris had said too. So.
Thank you very much. Sue?
So everything they said. One of the things I'd like us to do, but I don't see that it's possible given our current staffing levels, is to be more proactive about preservation in Boston. Sometimes we get worthy buildings in front of us, but they have been neglected for so many years that there's very little left. And as badly as we may want to preserve them, from a practical point of view, it just doesn't make any sense. Also, there's a cost to staff turnover, an actual cost to the city of having to replace people and retrain people frequently. There's a cost to public confidence when we can't get study reports done in a timely manner. And I want us to be able to do the best that we can for Boston, and especially for the not-so-famous buildings that may not matter to anybody outside the city but are incredibly important to the people who live here. And we're just way over capacity. And as much as commissioners would like to try and help the staff, in some ways there's no real way to do that. So we can all do better if we have more resources.
Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Castro. Live in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. I guess I have a lot to learn about the process.
A learning curve, I hear.
But I'm eager to do it. Civic engagement has always been really important to me, so I'm just looking to, be more involved in the city, and I look forward to learning from these people who have a lot of experience and contribute any way I can. Do you have a specific question for me, I guess?
Great. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. Is there anything that you'd like all of the commissioners to answer, or the appointees to answer? Councilor Braden? Oh, and I want to recognize, she'll get to ask in a minute, but District Councilor Kenzie Bock has joined us as well. Thank you.
I like what you said about thinking about more proactive approach to preservation. I've been a member of the Brighton and Alston Historical Society for 20 years or more, and I feel that sometimes we don't pay any attention until the thing's got a demolition order, and then we're scrambling to try and preserve something, and 9 times out of 10 we don't succeed in stopping a demolition. And I feel also that in our neighbourhoods we have artifacts of a previous era that are symbolic and meaningful, and tell us a lot about the history and the fabric of the community in the past. And very often the wave of development that we see just is a constant push to try and just rub those buildings and places off the map, and we lose something very precious. So I really commend you for all your work, and hope that we can be of support to help continue that, raise up those issues.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
Just out of curiosity, what do you think is the best way to be more proactive in terms of preservation in our neighbourhoods?
There's 2 ways. One would be if we had some actual legislation that would require a minimum level of maintenance. We've talked about that. I think it would probably be a lot of work to get it done. And the second is through education. It's helping people to understand what's around them and why it's worthy of being saved, and that there's a value, an actual real estate value to a historic structure in a neighborhood that would not be there if it wasn't preserved. I work in Beverly. We have a year demolition delay. It does make a difference.
I would add one thing to that. The surveys are a very useful tool, because they find the small buildings, as Sue said. That one of the big problems in Boston right now, that's a particular concern of Sue's, is the loss of the carriage houses. It's not on most people's radar. You don't tend to think about them, but there's been a richness because of the time of the historic development of Boston, and we have these carriage houses that are being let deteriorate. And when we see them, we've seen 4 or 5 in the past year probably. They come in for redevelopment, and it's too late, and nobody knew they were there. The neighbors didn't know they were there, or the neighbors didn't know that they could do something about it. So reaching out proactively with a survey of smaller resources would be a good thing to do, but would require more staff.
And just out of curiosity, do you partner with the historical societies in the neighbourhoods to try and do an inventory of important artifacts, like carriage houses or structures that should be protected?
The neighborhoods are an incredible resource, but some of them have stronger organizations than others. Brighton Alston has always been, back to the days of Bill Marchione, has always been a very strong organization. Some neighborhoods don't have that asset because people just aren't involved. So I'm sure it's help to the staff, but it doesn't, it doesn't replace really the legwork and the time that needs to go into creating these reports.
DRA to begin to help underwrite some of these neighborhood surveys, because for very little money we can update surveys that in some cases are decades old and are woefully inadequate.
The other comment, it's more of a comment than a question, but the African church in Highland Park was slated for demolition. So, even just the historic context of the history of Boston and our neighborhoods it reflects ethnic and immigrant history. And sometimes I think we pay more attention to the homes and places of business of the more affluent ancestors or forebears in our city, but sometimes the more grassroots community-based structures that have a history are of tremendous richness that are really important to preserve as well.
Thank you, Councillor Braden. I'll turn it over to Councillor Bock, and just want to thank, I know everyone is here, and we were hoping to wrap up this segment by 10:30, so we'll run a little bit over, but thank you for your patience. We'll get to everyone shortly. Councillor Bock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Kenzie Bock. I'm the new councillor from District 8, which runs from the West End, Beacon Hill, Back Bay, Fenway, and Mission Hill. So a lot of really wonderful historic resources, and I'm also a historian by training, so care quite a lot about this area. And I think I just want to echo I really appreciated hearing all of your thoughts. It's certainly been my observation that I think for the value that we need to place on them, our sort of staffing levels are inadequate to really proactively taking care of the historical resources we have in the city, which are really one of the unique resources of Boston, I think. And it seems like all of your comments to me are sort of pointing in the direction of, 50 years ago, we had the battles to start even preserving landmark buildings, right? To really think about how do we preserve things like Old City Hall, which we almost knocked down when we built this building, right? And I think that the tools you're talking about, the Landmark Commission, the hints in the name, right? The tools that we created then are for that purpose. And I think now, as a sort of historical community, we're moving to a better understanding about how beyond just landmarks, there's a whole kind of historical fabric that we need to protect. And we don't really have tools that are fit for purpose for that. So I think questions around how do we change both our staffing support and some of the tools that are available to kind of talk about history a little more upstream in our planning processes is really important. It's going to be something I'm going to be advocating for. I think also because right now, the very fact that one of the only two tools we have, the demolition delay, comes in at the true 11th hour, almost by definition sets history up in conflict with whatever project has been proposed, because basically everyone's gone through and dealt with every other interest before sort of getting confronted with the historical significance too often. And so I think if we had an upstream approach, we would be able to save more of that historical fabric without so much conflict with some of our other goals in the city. So I mainly just want to say that's something that I care quite a lot about, and I'm looking forward to partnering with the Commission on. I guess the one little question I would add is, just because we talked a lot about those bigger picture things, whether there's anything about how the Commission itself operates, just in terms of the regularity of your meetings or sort of the workload. I'm just curious if there's anything mechanically about the Commission operation that you all would love to see changed or altered.
John is actually probably best to speak to it, because he serves on design review, and that means on every other Tuesday, he's potentially in the BRA boardroom for 4 or 5 hours. We may or may not get out till 8 or 9 at night. And the reality is, we all are volunteers. That's great. We all bring chocolate or something to kind of hold us off from dinner. But at some point, I think we need to make the question of if we're asking folks like John to make 4 or 5 hour commitments, could we at least feed them like we do with BCDC and a couple other commissions? I raised that just as a simple equity issue because it's odd that we are willing to do it for some commissions and not for others. The other thing that I would say, going back to the conflict of development versus history, in the last 2 years, we've had at least 5 instances where projects were too small for VRA review, and it got through ISD, and then finally it popped up as a demo delay. And so we've got to figure out an internal workflow process that begins to get at this a lot sooner. Part of that is the fact that we are horrible at actually posting what projects are coming. You go to New York or San Francisco, every project in a neighborhood has a 4x4, billboard saying this property is up for this meeting on such and such date. We don't even do that for neighborhood communication. So how do we fix that internally as a city to begin to head out that conflict? And then likewise, how does the mayor provide the leadership to say it's not just the signature buildings or the signature churches that we care about. We care about everything. We're at a point now where almost everything built in the early 70s is going to become eligible for landmark conservation in the next couple of years. And so that rattles people because a lot of people don't necessarily like what was built in the 60s and 70s, but it is also what makes Boston, Boston.
So I have one thing, and I say this not knowing how we do it, but I'd like to see the staff empowered more. I'm also on the Fort Point Channel Landmark District Commission, and there we frequently see projects that come before us where the staff has made it very clear to the applicant that this is not going to fly, and yet they insist on bringing it before us anyway, and of course it doesn't fly. And I'm the director of a nonprofit, and the thing I hate more than anything else is wasting time, my own or anybody else's. And so they're professionals on this staff. They know what they're talking about, and I'd like to see them empowered in more cases to make a decision before it gets to us.
Thank you, Councillor Bock. I'm going to recognize and thank Councillor Sophie Georgia for being here as well. Councillor, do you have questions?
I don't have questions. I'll review the tapes. I don't
Great.
want to repeat anything that's been asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we will thank these appointees. The only note I want to make is that of this group that had been nominated, there's one person who was not able to join us for scheduling reasons, Bradford Walker. Rosanne, do you think you could just give a quick summary of his qualifications?
Sure. Brad he's one of our newer commissioners, and he's been a real asset. He's helped take over the design review committee activities so that when we lost a commissioner who moved out of state, out of the city, sorry, he was able to pick up that slack, and he's just kind of thrown himself into the whole circuit, even though he's learning as he's going. So to that end, we're going to be instituting some more training, so we don't have that do-it-yourself learning curve for commissioners. But Brad has been a real asset, and we're glad for him to be reappointed.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time, past, future, and present, and really appreciate you. We're going to gavel out and adjourn this hearing in order to switch over to the next group. So this concludes the City Council's hearing on dockets number 0113 through 0117, various appointments for the Boston Landmarks Commission. This hearing is adjourned. Appointments and potential confirmations to the Landmarks Commission and Historic Preservation District Commissions. My name is Michelle Wu. I chair the City Council's Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. We are here for this committee's hearing on dockets number 0106 through 0112, as well as 0118 through 0128. I want to remind everyone that this public hearing is being recorded and broadcast live on channels Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, and streaming on the City of Boston website. Please silence your cell phones and other devices, and if you would like to testify, feel free to sign in by the door, and we will incorporate your testimony throughout the hearing. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Councillor Liz Braden and Councillor Kenzie Bock. Because we are going to be speaking with two different commissions in this same hearing, this chunk, the Back Bay Architectural Commission, as well as the Highland Park Study Commission, Study Group. The Back Bay group has gotten priority because your district councilor is here, and so with her scheduling, we have asked you to join us first, and we give extra thanks to the Highland Park group for we'll try to breeze through as quickly as possible. So, to read everything into the record, the subject of this hearing is the confirmation of the appointments and reappointments to the Back Bay Architectural Commission and the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0106, appointment of Susanna Gasper as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2024. Docket number 0107, appointment of Meredith Christensen as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2022. Docket number 0108, reappointment of Kathleen OConnor as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2021. Docket number 0109, reappointment of John Christensen as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2023. Docket number 0110, appointment of Jerome Cooper King as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2023. Docket number 0111, appointment of James Berkman as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2021. Docket number 0112, appointment of Ethel McLeod as a member of the Back Bay Architectural Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2024. Docket number 0118, appointment of Andrew Shelburne as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0119, appointment of Curtis Maxwell Perrin as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0120, appointment of Diana Parkin as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0121, appointment of Ernest Karsten as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0122, appointment of John Freeman as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0123, appointment of John Ellertson as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0124, appointment of Kristen Hoffman as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0125, appointment of Lucy Lomas as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0126, appointment of Lynn Smilage as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. Docket number 0127, appointment of Maria Andrea Caceres as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. And finally, docket number 0128, appointment of Susan Goganian as a member of the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. The full text of the legislation and a copy of the resume of each appointee will be entered into the record. So we will not have to do that again for the second part. So now we'll turn it over to Roseanne. Could you please introduce this particular commission, as well as the members, and then we'll just jump right into questions for the appointees.
Sure. So I'm Rosanne Foley, for those of you who haven't met me, the Director of Historic Preservation for the City of Boston. And the Back Bay, just quick, one sentence, Madam Chair, on the Back Bay Commission. It dates back to the 1960s and was actually formed before the Landmarks Commission, which was created in the 1970s and was brought under the purview of Landmarks Commission. And the Back Bay is kind of unique in that any changes to the exterior of the building, even if it's not visible from a public way, are subject to the approval of the commission. So they see everything that staff can't sign off on. So I am going to have to ask people to introduce themselves because I haven't met everyone yet. But we have Jerome Cooper King and John Christensen, who I'm familiar with their work over the past few years, and I'll let everyone else kind of introduce themselves if that's
Sure.
okay.
Okay. Why don't we, and I apologize. I neglected to mention Councilor Sophie Georgia stepped out for a minute, but she has been here since the beginning, and in fact since the hearing before. So I wanted to make sure I noted that. So could we start over here with introductions?
The Boston Society of Architects. My background is about over 20 years of experience managing the design, development, and construction of multiple projects in Boston and throughout the U.S., varying in scale, complexity, and size. I am a resident of Back Bay, and I do have a personal interest in historic preservation as well as contextual appropriateness. So I hope to make some meaningful contribution should my appointment be viewed favorably.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meredith Christensen. Thank you, the city councilors, for this opportunity. So I've lived in the Back Bay for over 10 years. I studied at Boston Architecture College. I have a certificate in architectural preservation. From there, I went to Tufts, and I have a master's in urban planning. I've worked in commercial real estate for over 20 years throughout the city of Boston and in Cambridge. I think I can bring a thoughtful bounce to architectural integrity of the Back Bay, as well as some concepts of modernization that I know we are often asked to think about. So I'd very much enjoy being part of the committee.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jerome Cooper King. I've been a resident of the Back Bay for 21 years. I've been on the commission for 8 years. I run a small architectural design firm that specializes in hospitality design. I've been doing that for 20 years. It's an honor to be nominated again and serve the Back Bay.
Thank you.
I'm John Christensen, and I've been on the commission for about 35 years, or some range in that area. And through the years, I've seen it evolve into what I think is an effective organization. And I'm very pleased to see the staff has been recently, the last 2 staff members have been wonderful and have picked up the ball and done a lot of work for us, made us focus. My background is I worked for Shepherd Bullfinch as a project architect, designer, whatever, and worked and then retired. They sort of semi-retired me in about 4 years ago, and I'm still working independently now.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Berkman. I once thought I was going to be an architect. I took a summer program at Carnegie Mellon in architecture. I was a fellow at Historic Deerfield, so I have a deep, long-lasting interest in architecture. I've lived in the Back Bay for almost 14 years now. I used to be in Ward 5 and worked with Councilor Bock in Ward 5. I just moved last month to Ward 4 on the other side of Copley. I'm active in the community. I was also an associate of the Boston Public Library, a trustee of the Associates. And I do think that our physical and architectural heritage is crucial to the health of our community, and so I'd be very honored to serve on the commission.
Thank you. We'll go to councilors for questions. Councilor Braden.
Questions at this time?
Thank you. Councilor Bock.
Well, I mainly just wanted to welcome you all here and say that, I think the Back Bay Architectural Commission is just such an important resource for our neighborhood. And to say that I know I've heard from the neighborhood the importance of sort of getting these appointments approved so that we can make sure that we've got a quorum, and so that we can relieve some people who have been serving past the expiration of their term, who have done yeoman service and deserve to rest on their laurels a little bit. So I'm just really glad we're having this hearing, and glad that you all are here, and certainly looking forward to being a resource to the commission myself, and getting to know, I know some of you well, but getting to know all of you. So,
thank you, Councilor Bock. Councilor Sophie Georgia.
I don't have any questions, just to say that thank you for being here. I appreciate your interest and passion for this work, and definitely consider this too. Very impressive resumes that all of you share. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. The only question I will put out there for anyone who wishes to answer it, could you just summarize what are the types of issues that come up most frequently before the commission, and are there any ways that the city's either legislative or programmatic or funding priorities could help head those off before they get to you?
I don't know. One of the things that we talk about a great deal, especially lately, we've been working on our sign guidelines and revising our sign guidelines. And one of the things that continually comes up is, how do we police these guidelines? I know we have a practice we have a practice excuse me, we have a practice set up to police these for the long-term egregious architectural things that happen, such as I apologize, I'm getting off track. When we look at the sign guidelines, we have the small sandwich boards that are set up, and we want to know how we police these. How do we immediately kind of control the aspect of overpopulating some of our commercial areas with all of these signs? And we don't have an answer. We never have who's going to control this, and we've been struggling with it for some time. We just like a little, I think some guidance from legal would help us as to how we kind of control these some of these issues that come up regarding signs in our commercial district.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you.
I'm not on the commission yet, but I'm co-chair of the NAB Architectural Committee. And we have the same concerns, and we'd extend it from just the sandwich board signs, which are an issue, and enforcement, to decks on roofs, to exterior changes that don't get put through the system and approved. And once they happen, there's almost no enforcement way to undo them or to penalize the people who do them. So it leaves a culture of people thinking that they can get away with doing it if they just don't ask. So I would affirm that and extend it to other issues.
I think the decks and the more permanent things, we have a practice in, but it doesn't work efficiently.
Right.
With the smaller items and the signs, we don't have anything yet. We can't remove signs. We can't touch anything that's on private property. We can't, by the time we issue any kind of a citation. It's changed. But I agree with Jim. We need to
Enforcement.
the whole thing.
Enforcement.
Okay.
By and large, the new work that had been put in place of what was there, I think it has been quite reviewed very heavily by us. And I think my view is that it's turned out pretty well, but that one has to be very diligent, otherwise it won't. And I think Nike building, for instance, is a good building. I think it was in the interest of the city, I think, and it's raising money. I think now that Boylston Street's becoming a lot more glassy. I think the previous staff member who had a historical background, was able to teach us to a degree how we might use glass in there and scale it down and make Boylston Street work as a commercial activity, which it does, I think, quite well. And from my standpoint, I think we have to preserve the historic integrity of the neighborhood, everything sort of, everything, including Newbury Street. We've got to keep that character here, because that character is what very much defines Boston, and I think its ability to, to serve as to bring the tourists in, which we need, and money.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the only last question I have is that Susanna Gasper and Kathleen Connor were not able to join. Roseanne, would you like to add anything on their backgrounds? We have the resumes for the record, but anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, so I've seen the resume of the new appointee, potential appointee. I have not met her either. This was something the mayor's office oversaw, so I trust their decision, obviously. Kathy Connor is a renomination, and she's been a very able chair of the Back Bay Commission, and is involved in a Newbury Street business, so she has that viewpoint. So,
got it.
Yep, she's been great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to testify to her abilities as the chair. She's been good. I mean, doesn't represent the same things that I do, but she does a great meeting, and she's deliberate, understanding.
Thank you very much. Final comment from Jim.
Could I just go back to a question that Councilor Bock asked the last group, which was, are there any mechanical things that would make things work more smoothly? And called your attention, if you weren't aware, how long this process has taken. My papers were in May. It's been 9 months, and that just seems unduly long for a hearing to confirm. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. This will conclude. Oh, I will note also that NAB has submitted a letter in support of John, Jerome, and Jim as their appointees. So thank you very much for your time. We will switch over and move to the Highland Park study group.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Juan.
To make it in?
Yes. Okay.
Hi, I think there's only 4 here, so.
Yeah, think about it. And maybe it's if there are other questions that come up. Is that a public meeting? Oh, okay. So maybe we don't. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. I'll wait for them to step out. This one was the most exciting one for me out of the whole thing today. We are talking about potentially establishing a new district, and this is one that, at least in my relatively biased opinion, where so much of the action is happening. We heard earlier in the Landmarks Commission hearing about how the pressures of development are really resulting in this dam about to burst on historic preservation and assets that are really important to the community that may not have had the resources to maintain them, and ways that we can add now an additional legislative and sort of city force to protecting that heritage for the community. So I'm really excited about setting this up. Roseanne, would you like to describe what this entity is and then introduce the members?
So for those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Rosanne Foley. I'm the Director of Historic Preservation for the City of Boston, and I'm also the Director of the Boston Landmarks Commission. And I am also very excited about this process, Madam Chair. The Highland Park District has been pending for many, many years. It is a National Register district and is very worthy of being an architectural conservation district. So we were very pleased that the community came and pushed to move this forward from the pending status into more of a proactive approach. The study committee that these folks represent will be working with staff and with a consultant to develop the legally required study report that will make the recommendation for the district, the boundaries, the guidelines, everything about a new district. In most cases, the study committees that help form Fort Point or South End serve as a nucleus for a new commission for that district to administer that district. The other point that you should probably know as well is that the state legislation for establishing districts requires new staff be on board to help the commission in its work. So adding a planner for helping the commission move forward after the district is hopefully implemented would be down the road a ways. But we already have the study report, parts of it underway with a consultant. So as soon as the study committee is ready and sworn in, we can kind of hit the ground running to get them out there looking at the boundaries and working with the consultant and with staff.
Thank you. Councilor Braden, do you have questions just for Roseanne on the structure before we get to the appointees?
I'm also very excited about this. I think that it's a very big positive step in the right direction to protect the historic area, and wish you all the best and every success in the effort.
Thank you. Okay, so could we start here, and if you could introduce yourself and maybe just a quick summary of your background and why you're interested in participating.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ernest Karsten, and I've lived in Highland Park for over 40-some years. I remember when there were a lot of vacant lots, and you know, the neighborhood, we would organize around keeping the lots clean. Finally, we did some gardening, so we have gardens. And now with the housing boom, things are popping up all over the neighborhood. It all looks different. There's not often a lot of consideration for what's already been there. Because it's old doesn't mean that it's bad, even though it may be expensive to duplicate, but it should fit in. And we have things, it's like a Wild West show in terms of what some of the architects want to put in that may be experimental from their perspective. But, you know, like the last group, we heard that once it's built, it's there. You know, it's very difficult to do anything about it. So just trying to preserve the neighborhood and have things that's new in new spaces sort of fit with the lifestyle of the people that's already living there.
Thank you, Mr. Karsten.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Hoffman. I'm on the Boston Landmarks Commission, and I have been for about 15 years. I also serve on the Aberdeen Architectural Conservation District Commission. And while I'm not a resident of Highland Park, but I'm a resident of the North End, I think it's incredibly important that this wonderful historic area of Boston is getting support and recognition and protection.
now as a result of what the community's done.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maria Andrea Cáceres, and I'm a newly resident of Highland Park. I lived there. I've been living there for 3 years. I got interested in this project from the community organizing perspective. That's my background. I think the community needs a voice to be able to kind of decide together how they want to build their community, how they want to protect the spaces that are there, the open spaces, and also, you know, the historical richness that the community has. So I was very interested since the beginning, having many conversations when we were collecting the signatures to move this process forward, of just learning more about, you know, the perspectives from many neighbors about why they live there, how they want to preserve their space, and how they want to build their community.
Thank you, Maria.
I'm John Ellertson. My wife and I have lived in Highland Park for 52 years. At the time that we came to Highland Park, there was rampant disinvestment, and we lost a lot of beautiful buildings. Now we have a lot of new investment, some of which is not really responsible. So, to echo what was said earlier in a previous hearing, you know, the 90-day demolition delay is a very weak tool that has not served us well. We had to resort to petitioning to have landmark 2 parcels which were threatened by either redevelopment or to be torn down. So I'm very glad to have this opportunity for my colleagues and some potential members I haven't yet met and worked with. I'm enthusiastic because we really need this. There are many structures in Highland Park that today are at risk of demolition because we don't have the tool that this study committee will move toward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Diana Parkon. I serve on the Boston Landmarks Commission and on the South End Landmarks District Commission. I'm not a resident of Highland Park, but I'm very familiar. I grew up there, friends living in the neighborhood, so I see the difference that has the change over the past 40 years. And it's a beautiful area, and I just want to be part of trying to maintain, but also oversee any changes that come in so they can be compatible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Shelburne. I'm a resident of Highland Park. Fairly new resident. I've lived in Highland Park only 9 years, 12 years overall in Roxbury. I'm pretty active in the community. I attend as many community meetings as I can. And one of the things that continuously comes up is that we indeed do not have the tools to basically prevent or have a discussion around the easy demolition of historic buildings in our neighborhood. The only tool we have is to go through this very long process of trying to get a property landmarked. And, you know, the criteria for that is at a very high level. Either it has to be of local and national significance, and many of the buildings that have historic value in Highland Park do not rise to that level, but yet they are still of value to the community. And I will say one thing too, is it's not just about the buildings per se. These buildings have memories for generations. And once these buildings are demolished with a developer that has a 3-year cycle of investment, those memories go with this structure. So typically a developer will buy a parcel, demolish the building, go through planning in 1 year, and sell the and build the next year and then sell the building on the third year, and they're gone. You know, they don't care about what that thing looks like or how it fits in with the neighborhood. There's no regard to context of any abutting buildings, and often they go straight for an as-of-right project and try to avoid any neighborhood process. So we would like to change that. Thank you very much.
So I had one question, and whomever is interested, please jump in. How, as committee members, how are you thinking about setting up the process now of engaging? Okay, how about I phrase this? How are you thinking about creating a community engagement process and mechanism and sort of habits almost that will carry on beyond the end of this group and transition to when there's an actual district commission? Is it a certain type of outreach, or where you'll be holding the meetings, or what are the ways in which we can use this current phase to really prepare the kind of community connection to the eventual district?
Let me speak to that question. Highland Park has an active neighborhood association, the Highland Park Neighborhood Coalition, which meets monthly, and Councilor Wu.
And very active email list, too.
We are happy that you've come to our events. And incidentally, we're having a community dinner on Leap Day this Saturday, so anybody here is welcome to come and have some food and conversation. You know, the ongoing conversation takes place in these types of monthly meetings. We also have a PRC that works with DND, with the city's Department of Neighborhood Development, on vacant parcels. But, you know, we recognize that we need to do better. We're constantly, that's one reason we have these community dinners or cookouts, to try to engage people who ordinarily would not give up an evening when they might need to be helping their children with homework or taking a nap before their second job. So we really want to engage, and we intend to engage. We have a very nice website. We also have a community land trust, which is engaging the community on a complementary level.
Anyone else? Maria and Andrea, you talked about community organizing. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it would be really good to just maintain the conversation. It was very important for me to go out there in the neighborhood and have that one-to-one conversations with the neighbors, and I think that that's something that we can continue to do, because you learn so much about, like, you know, their perspective and also their interest on how to, you know, be participating in the process and having a voice on deciding what the community should look like. So I think that that could be also another vehicle that we can continue to engage in.
Thank you. Mr. Hostin, as a longtime resident, any thoughts?
In some ways, we're already engaged in the process. We have been engaged in the process. We just don't always have enough muscle to make things happen that we know and believe should happen. You know, just like Andrew had said, that the only tool that we really wind up with, you know, is to stop the demolition. Well, it's not really stop the demolition, it's more of postponing it, right? And then we see the building gone and the empty lot. We have been able to make some progress in spite of that, you know, with the church on the corner of Cedar and Thornton. But yes, we have already engaged in the process. So this would be a great step forward to being able to have a say in the preservation and a say over what goes next to those buildings that's already there. So that really impacts the quality of life for those people that are still living in the neighborhood and for generations to come, because they can look and see what was there and have an appreciation for what was there and what's being built, because it would have some care, not just a 3-year turnaround and somebody made a lot of money and we have something that said, what the hell happened there?
If I could just add one other footnote. You know, we're not just interested in preservation of buildings. We're really devoted to the preservation of our community, the social infrastructure. And Andrew alluded to that when he said when a building's torn down, the memories of that building that carry the history, the care that people exercised when they built the building, lived in the building, worked in the building. So to us, preservation is broadly defined.
Andrew, you had a comment?
Hello. I think we had about, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had over 500 signatures to get this process started. And we had a lot of people volunteer to basically go door knocking throughout the neighborhood to collect these 500 signatures. And for this church at 50 Cedar Street, we had over 2,700 signatures. So there is a very broad interest in the neighborhood for preservation. And as far as continuing this after we, step back or whatever, we've talked, some of us had talked about maybe there's some kind of election for like new members or recommendations to replace us after a time that we serve, but that we would try to keep this group very diverse and representative of the neighborhood. Thank you. I think that's what you were getting at.
Yeah, perfect. Would anyone else like to chime in? Any other thoughts? Councilor Braden, do you have any other questions?
I really commend you for your efforts. I've been a long-time member of the Brighton and Allston Historical Society, and what they do a neighbourhood walk and to talk about the structures. Sadly, there's a folder, a binder, a ring binder with photographs of buildings that used to be there, and it's really important to preserve our built heritage and our community heritage going forward and not lose that. But I really commend you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm informed that there is no one signed up to testify, so this will conclude our hearing this morning and the Council's Committee on Planning, Development and Transportation, confirmations of the appointments or reappointments to the Back Bay Architectural Commission and the Study Committee on the potential designation of the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. We'll take up the vote for these confirmations at the next City Council meeting. Thank you. This hearing is adjourned.